Hi, I'm Carol Fitzgerald from Reading Group Guides, a website from the Book Report Network, and the host of the Book Reporter Talks to video podcast series. And it is so nice to have all of you joining us this evening. We are really excited to have with us as our guest Bruce Holsinger, and we're going to be discussing his book, Culpability. This was an Oprah Book Club selection. It was one of my Book Reporter Bets On selections. And it was one of those books that was actually kind of prescient about talking about AI in a novel. And for us all to be able to see, wait a second, what was Bruce talking about? What was he talking about when that book came out last year? And what have we been hearing from AI about AI since then? Our reviewer Nora Peel had this to say about it. Culpability is a compelling study of family dynamics, as well as a briskly propulsive and suspenseful read. The twists at the end of the book came thick and fast, and even if not all of them will come as a shock to every reader, at least one of them certainly will. I agree with that. So let's talk about the format for tonight's program. Let me start by noting that we're assuming everyone has read the book. This is not the kind of book club that you're just coming for the wine. No, we want you to be able to say that you have joined us and you've read the book. So we are going to be talking spoilers. I'm going to begin with a couple of questions for Bruce, and then six of our readers will be joining us live to ask their questions, and I'll be asking questions for a couple of others. And then we will take questions from the audience in a Q&A. So during the evening, if you have questions that you would like to ask, please drop them into the Q&A below, not into the chat, because Tom Donadio, our illustrious editorial director, will be looking in the Q&A section, not in chat for your questions. And we like to see where readers are joining us from, so be sure to jump into the chat and tell us where you are, who you're from, and what you're reading. And with that housekeeping behind us, let's welcome Bruce to the stage.
Yeah, thrilled to be with you, Carol.
Thank you so much for coming back.
Of course.
I always love hearing with authors. This I usually have the authors at this point tell us a little bit about the book, but we've all read the book. So we instead want to hear what was it like when Oprah called. Let's go right to the big story, folks,
Yeah, yeah, right to it. Yeah, it was unbelievable. My book, I remember telling you this story already when we did an in-person event some months ago when things were still fresh. My book was supposed to publish in October of last year, and I got this cryptic email from my editor telling me that we needed to talk about something. And she told me that we might be moving the publication date. There were some moving parts. I didn't know what was going on. I was pretty freaked out because I was with a new publisher for me. So I didn't know why they were moving it, why they were advancing it. I was worried that it wouldn't get any buzz, any chance to get on, books we're most excited about for the season and so on. And then I was up in DC for an event, and I was supposed to get a call from my publicity team. We were going to do a Zoom call to talk about how to deal with the change pub date, and it was supposed to be at 2 o'clock. And shortly before, my publicist tells me, "Look, our Zoom is on the fritz. You're going to get a phone call instead." And lo and behold, 2 o'clock comes. I pick up the phone, and it's Oprah Winfrey, and just telling me that my book had been chosen as her summer read. And I don't remember anything about that phone call. I know she was on her way to meet the new pope, as Oprah does. But yeah, it was just like a lightning bolt. And this is the kind of thing an author dreams of. It really is life-changing. And there were 500 books that came out last summer that could just as easily have gotten that nod. So I've just felt so fortunate and so blessed, and it's been amazing what that has done for the book
Yeah,
and the
well,
kind of discussions that it's enabled. And
just the buzz that happens when something like that happens, just the
yeah,
buzz, and it's exciting. And we see a book move, and we're always like, why'd that book move? Did it move
yeah,
up 3 weeks? What's ending up happening? And we play sleuth a lot of like, oh, what books are going to be chosen? Sometimes we're right, most of the times we're wrong.
right, yeah,
So, at the start of the book, you start about the family as an algorithm, and we think about the AI aspect of this book, but really at the heart of it is this family. And there's this great quote: "A family is an endlessly complex, yet adaptable and resilient. The parents and the children working together as parts of an intricate, coordinated whole. So, sure, there might be some bugs in the system, a glitch or two, But if you simply tweak the constants from time to time, life would continue to unfold in its intricate yet predictable patterns. So let's talk about that, the
Okay,
family.
yeah. So that comes at the very beginning of the book. And if you've read it, you'll remember, I hope, that that is Lorelei Shaw's vision of what a family is, right? And before all this starts, she has this very confident, kind of naive belief that a family is like an algorithm, right? And Noah quotes that, like he remembers what she said from way before any of this stuff happened to this family, that a family is like an algorithm. It's somewhat predictable. You manage the inputs, then you can predict the outputs. Lorelei works with algorithms and it's predictable. You know what's going to, but if you grew up in a family, if you have a family, you know that nothing is predictable. Everything is chaotic and your fate can change on a dime.
Mhm.
And that's indeed what happens to this family. So, in some ways, a family is like an algorithm. That's a phrase that, that for better or worse, the book has become known for. And of course, that's a phrase that gets completely undermined. It's a belief that becomes undermined throughout the novel. A family, of course, is not like an algorithm. It's a much more complicated system, much more unpredictable. But I felt like putting it at the beginning just kind of set it up, right, um, to be toppled by the time we get to the end.
I always say people have one child and their four possible interactions, and then they have a second and they go, "Oh my gosh, how did
Yeah,
this get to be so crazy?" I said, "Well, now there are 11 possible interactions." And
yeah,
that sort of sets up what your life is going to be like from here on in.
yeah. It's exponentially more complicated,
It's
right?
exponentially more complicated.
Yeah.
You also have got these great section titles, and I love the titles, and I still love these looking back. Glitch, interface, cipher, entanglement, containment. Now, did you always know these were sections, or did you play around with those at the end?
Well, I like to write in 3 or 5 act structures. I don't really do that consciously. It's just when you write enough novels, plot, I'm a pretty plot-driven writer. There's a certain way a plot will unfold, right? There'll be something that happens at the beginning to complicate things. There'll be this kind of rising action that gets more and more complicated. And then there'll be some kind of resolution. And I decided to use kind of computational or AI affiliated language to mark out those sections. So they weren't super, I mean, it was more just a kind of way of retrospectively organizing the book and getting it coming at you in these 5 different parts that would be oriented around that kind of language, that kind of outline.
When you think about last month, this last when this book came out, last July was it? It was July,
Mhm.
correct? Okay. Think about how much more we think, talk, hear, hear rumblings about AI
Oh
since
yeah.
that time last year. Just think how the thing has gone exponential. You don't get through a day where you don't hear about what is going on with AI stocks, what's being powered by AI, who's buying what, who's the chairman of this or that. And today, like the stocks were going down because the tech stocks were betting against AI. They were betting against
Yes.
AI of what's going to happen. And it's really like this thing that goes on like this all day long. And you think about if you're the person who's in charge of tech on the street, you don't have a really easy time of it right now. You really don't.
No, and 2 days ago, Tesla in self-driving mode plowed into a house and killed an elderly woman, right? So AI is right on the edge of every conversation that we're having
Yeah.
about teaching. In my day job, I'm a novel writer, but I also am a university teacher. I teach English literature at the University of Virginia. Um, and this is a discussion that's right at the forefront of everything in higher education these days. Both of my sons work in um, kind of financial technology in different ways. And they're always dealing with AI, and that is kind of the name of the game at both of their companies right now. It's everywhere. And in many ways, I did a lot of research on AI. I did a lot of interviews and so on with people in various tech spaces for this book. But I've learned so much more about AI since the book came out
Mhm.
because of how many conversations I've had with people in so many different industries. I mean, you can't, you can't walk down the street without having some kind of encounter with AI and some embodiment.
It's interesting because the way that Anthropic went and stole, pirated many books from Russia, and they use that to train AI. Because what do books teach? They teach feeling, they teach how emotion happens, they teach so many ways that people interact with one another. So
Mhm.
by stealing these books and using them to train AI, it's the lawsuit that authors are all,
Yeah,
suing at this point. And when you think about it, a movie doesn't do it quite the same way because you have to watch the person's face. Everything in a book is on the page. It's right
yeah.
there. It's not like she nodded, it's all right in the thing. And I was at an event a couple of weeks ago with authors, and they were standing there talking about this. And David Baldacci said, basically, if you put all my books into AI, it could write one of my books. It would
Mhm.
be able to spin it back out, which is extremely scary at this time.
Yeah, I think three or four of my novels are involved in that Anthropic suit, and it's something I think about a lot. Um, but I disagree with David. I
Okay.
don't think it could write one of his novels. It would write a pale imitation of his novels.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe in 5 years, maybe in 2 years, that imitation will be much more convincing. But there's a lot of current controversies about AI writing. There's a couple, two or three short stories that have won very prestigious awards,
Mhm.
um, that have been discovered to be written by AI, in retrospect. One was published in Granta. I think it was the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, and then there was another one. But you go back and read those stories. I don't know. I don't know if it's quite there. The thing that excites me more is, um, I'm really interested in the kind of collaborations that writers have been doing with AI, where they're very forthright about it. People
Mhm.
like Sheila Heti, a brilliant novelist from Canada, who published a short story in the New Yorker some years ago that was written in collaboration with a chatbot. Um, or Wahini Vara, who's a tech journalist who
Mhm.
had that very viral essay about talking to a chatbot about her sister,
Yes.
her sister who had died. Those things are kind of haunting. So I don't know. It was, I think, Dario Amodei. I heard an interview with him. I think it was him, describing these AIs cropping up all over the place as these troublesome genies. And
Mm.
that's what they seem like to me. They're extraordinarily capable right now. And I think a lot of people in the arts dismiss them at their peril. And I'm really interested in this as a problem right now, more in my nonfiction writing than anything else.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the role of AI in the arts more broadly.
Broadly, and what's going to happen from there?
Yeah,
There's a lot to think about. Well, joining
for
us
sure.
right now is Debbie Moore from Syracuse, New York. Debbie's been part of many of our book group discussions. I think this is our 46th Bookaccino Live book group. I think this is
Wow.
46, 26. Debbie, welcome.
Thanks, Carol. It's nice to be here again. Bruce, I loved your book. I When I first saw the cover, I had no idea that it was going to be about AI. It's like, oh, it's going to be about a family and on the water in the summer. Oh, that'll be
Yeah.
really fun. But I was wondering, what was your impetus for your decision, or was there one thing or many things to write a book about the consequences of our reliance on and trust in AI technology?
Yeah, that was not a decision I made at all. It was the book started out very conventionally. It had nothing to do with AI. It had the same premise, a family of
Mhm.
five in a minivan. They have this horrible accident, and everybody in the car is responsible in some way for the accident.
Mhm.
But it had nothing to do with AI. The car was not self-driving. It was just a regular old car, a minivan. And then I was on tour for my last book, The Displacements, and I was in Santa Monica, and I got in an Uber, in a Waymo for the first time, and it really shook me. And I just thought to myself, okay, this could be a really interesting twist in this book because the first draft wasn't working. I was thinking, okay, how could I complicate this? And I'm the kind of writer, I often will be like a third of the way through a novel and I'll set it aside because it's not working. I've done that many times. Um, And in this case, it wasn't quite working. And I thought, okay, this could be a really interesting problem. But the phrase artificial intelligence wasn't even in my head. And then, I kept writing, I worked that complication in, and then ChatGPT comes onto the scene. Everybody in the world is talking about AI, and suddenly I realize what I'm doing here. And then it's all the pieces start falling in place. And that's really when just to answer your question, Debbie, that was when I decided, okay, what this book is really doing, it's grappling with the moral consequences of AI. And where do I go from there? And then I was kind of off to the races.
So was it always your intent, even, now that you've said how AI actually made it into the book, that every member of this family was going to struggle with the part they played in the accident and explore how their feelings affected their future use of AI once you
Yeah.
got it?
Well, again, before I knew that I was doing anything with autonomous driving, yes, everyone was thinking about the consequences for them. And the other craft aspect of this is that I was in everybody's head. It was written from all five points of view. I was in Lorelai's head, Alice, Izzy, they probably had different names at that point. But they weren't thinking about AI at all. And then once I knew what I was doing, once I really knew what the novel was about, then the technology became a kind of almost an envelope of the bubble that they were living in. But it's not a futuristic novel, it's not apocalyptic, it's not
Yeah,
dystopian, it's right now. And
yeah,
that's what I was trying to do. That, yeah.
yeah. At the end of the book, uh, Lorelai, who was my favorite character, and I think the most
Oh, good.
complicated character,
Yes.
she was, I think she had the biggest struggle because she was a techie, but she was also an ethicist. And, how you fit those two together. And when she breaks her contract with AI, the AI technology company that is working on programs to help the government develop weapons, did you do this to show ultimately our ethical beliefs will determine or at least play a part in the types of AI technology that we develop and how far we're willing to go with AI
Well,
technology?
I would like to believe that. And Lorelai would like to believe that, right?
Right.
Ethics first, right? That morality will guide the kinds of decisions we made about technology, but I don't know if I believe that anymore. Even
Yeah.
just in the years since the book came out, uh, companies are just firing their ethics teams. They're lobbying Congress and state legislatures against guardrails. Anthropic might pop up and say, look, we really need to be careful when we release this latest model. But we don't support any laws against releasing it, right? So
Mhm.
there's uh, this whole culture of anti-safety, anti-ethics, anti-morality.
Right.
And even if the tech companies aren't saying that, that is in many ways the effect. And I worry
Mhm.
about it greatly.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that her character, the way you ended the book with that decision that she had to make, really got to the heart of it, at least for me, is,
Yeah,
there's
and
that balance.
she's the voice of that, right? She's the voice of
Yeah.
constraint, of slowing down, of stopping and thinking, you know. And in the many events, the travel I've done for this book, so many people will ask this kind of question about like, how can we constrain these companies, these models? How can we create more ethical ways of dealing with these new beings? Because that's what they are,
Mhm.
Yeah.
whether they're intelligent or not. I think that's a trivial question in the end.
Yeah.
It's their beings and they are acting on us. They're acting in our world just like we are, and they're acting very powerfully.
Well, like I said, I loved your book.
Well, thank
It made
you.
me think about so many different things with AI technology, like you and Carol were both saying, you can't turn around without it being part of your life, no matter
Yeah.
what you do.
Yeah.
It's there and you've got to kind of figure that out and what part you're going to be. So I really appreciated your book and it was a great story.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks as always for joining us. Always love to see you. What I really liked about this book versus when we said we were going to do this discussion, how many people reached out and said, I'm going to read this book, and then started writing and say, wow, this is really interesting. Because they see culpability and they're like, oh, okay, what's that about? Like you said, there's this beach scene and what's going to happen. And we heard from so many readers that said, I might not have read this book. I might not have
Mm.
picked this up. And it was really nice to be able to say, oh, we were presenting an opportunity. So I've got a question from Melanie Pessoa from Lenexa, Virginia. Was the story culpability fully formed in your mind before you began to write, or did this story unfold for you as you were writing? And you had said before you are plot driven. So
Yeah.
did anything come out as you were doing it?
Yeah, I'm plot driven, but I'm a very bad outliner.
Mhm.
And so I know basically I know how I want you to feel as a reader when you close the book, right at that last page. But I don't really know how I'm going to get there. So the answer is absolutely no. This was not fully formed. It changed. It went in so many different directions. A lot of it had to do with the setting. It's set in the Northern Neck and of Virginia. And where is this reader from? Where in Virginia?
She's from, let me just say, Lenexa, Lanexa. Don't know where it is.
Oh my God, I'm a Virginia native. I live in Virginia. I've never heard of Lenexa.
Okay.
Um, if I'd love to know if she's in the chat. Anyway, so yeah, I knew the setting. The setting determined a fair amount. Like this family is living next to this tech billionaire on this very fancy estate. And and so I knew kind of the setting, the premise. I knew a fair number of the characters, but I really didn't know where the story was going to go.
Yeah.
That's often the case with me.
And from there it all builds.
Yeah,
Debbie Briscoe is going to join us now from Virginia Beach, Virginia.
great.
Debbie, here you go.
Okay,
There you are.
here I am. Hi, I'm glad to be talking to a fellow Virginian. I'm from Virginia Beach, but I was born and raised in the Farmville area closer to Charlottesville.
Great.
Um, yes. Um, Before I start my question, I have become intrigued by the name I cannot say it right, Eurydice.
Eurydice?
Um, yeah, she has such a tragic, well, of course, the Greek mythology embedded in tragedy there. Is that chosen on purpose?
Okay, this is funny. So I named my character Eurydice that Charlie falls in love with. I had there was this girl in high school named Eurydice, and she had this really rich dad, and I had a huge crush on her for a while. And that's the only reason that character is named Eurydice. It has nothing to do with the Orpheus and Eurydice myth. And when I submitted the manuscript with that name, my agent and my editor both said, you need to change that because if you don't, you'll get a whole bunch of questions about Greek mythology. But I never did.
Yes, and I gave
So,
it to
yeah, I should have named her
retired
Kathy or
English
something like
teacher
that.
here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, retired English teacher here.
yeah,
Uh,
of course.
um, my question comes from my own relationship with my son. I kept seeing myself in Noah. My son was a full ride scholarship athlete. We lived it. We did everything that Noah did. We were in the right places at the right time. We had him, he was a tremendous wrestler and continued to be. So I had some guilt when I was reading what Charlie was thinking, and I sort of knew what Charlie was thinking. But my question comes in with Noah spent many years intentionally protecting and sculpting Charlie's future, just like I did with my own son, like my husband did with our own son. And I had the biggest feeling in the pit of my stomach when Noah was on that road and that big time lawyer called him. That security guard was watching him. He felt like he was under the microscope. And as he's kept Charlie under the microscope, he kept him under the microscope
Hmm.
his whole life.
Yeah.
Was that meant to be a moment when he realized his limitations as a parent and what a parent can actually control. And
Yeah.
where do you think the line between protecting a child and teaching them accountability is?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, that scene came very late in the writing process. That scene where he was on the road and dealing with the lawyer and realizing that his son's future was in jeopardy. And I like you, I had two sons who were very intense athletes, and I was completely obsessed with their soccer playing. Like they both played Division I soccer in college, and I was one of those very high maintenance sports dads, even though I never did any sports myself, right? So I have a particular kind of relationship to that, the athleticism of the high school kid, and all the investment and protectiveness that parents put into that. And I would say that my last three novels are all about, I guess you'd call it helicopter parenting, snowplow parenting, whatever phrase you want to use. It's about the dilemmas of modern parenthood and the ways we want to make the world safe for our kids, right? And we often don't let them make their own mistakes. We protect them, we put them in a bubble. And a novel is a great place for exploring those problems, right? A novel, especially a novel about a family, it's this beautiful wrought bubble, and you can just pop it, and that just creates all kinds of possibilities for your story. So, yeah, I think about those issues a lot.
Yes. And when he was talking about their grocery list and the car that he drove and all the hours that the
Yeah.
calendar that was centered around him. And then I had a daughter who was not a great athlete, but everything circled around, what my son did. And I related so much to Noah. Not not as much to Lorelai, but definitely Noah. I
Yeah.
appreciate your book a lot.
Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
writing it.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Debbie. Thanks for joining us. It is interesting how much time people do spend on the playing field with their children, and then it all ends. And then
Yeah.
like it's over.
Yeah.
Now, are your sons consumed with the FIFA, like with the
World
all the
Cup.
matches that are going on right now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They love it. Yeah.
Totally into it. Totally into it. It's the final is going to be not far from here. And they have these huge signs
Oh,
on the
wow.
highway in foreign languages, like "Do not walk on the highway," "Do not do this." It's very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
interesting. Really, really interesting. Sue Freeman is going to join us from Scottsdale, Arizona.
Oh, great.
Yeah. See, I think I saw Sue come on. Sue come on before. If she doesn't,
You
I see your
did,
name.
Carol. And hey, I'm sorry, I'm not on microphone and I don't remember the question I submitted.
oh, do you want me to read it then?
I would love it. Thank you.
You're welcome. As AI becomes more embedded in daily life, do you think society will become more comfortable with shared responsibility, or will we continue looking for a single person to blame?
Mm. Ooh, that's a question that really cuts to the center of what the novel is exploring. Um, I think it's going to be a mixed bag, and I'm not copping out from your question. I think that, in terms of driving, self-driving cars, um, people are going to be, it's not a story, it's not a news story if somebody has an accident.
Hmm.
Lorelai points this out. If there's some big accident in Scottsdale, Arizona, and there's two humans at the wheel, that doesn't get in the news, right? But if an autonomous car has an accident, suddenly we're pinning blame on the company.
Hmm.
Um, Suddenly it becomes national news, right?
Mhm.
And I think there's, with all these technologies, there's maybe time and comfort level, I think are going to determine a lot of how we deal with the relationship between human and machine culpability. How we deal with AIs as agents, as we're starting to use this phrase agentic AI. It's no longer just these passive large language models. It's these models that you can set loose
Hmm.
through all of your systems and accounts, and are starting to become more and more autonomous. So it's, the law is so far behind. I don't just mean case law, but I mean legislatively, in terms of regulations and so on. It's just where the technologies are so far ahead of where the law is. And I think that's a reason for concern.
Mhm.
You also you mentioned your Waymo earlier, and we were one of the pilot models, excuse me, for Waymos. And I've been doing a little bit of reading, because your example is so spot on about the car accident.
Hmm.
But clearly, at least what I've been reading is that Waymos are actually safer.
Yes.
Right. But nobody feels like that because it's AI. So,
Yes.
yeah,
The studies that have been done, and there's not many of them.
right.
So I'm not a scientist. So I'm a novelist and a medievalist. So what do I know? But the things that I've read, the when they've done comparisons between accidents per passenger hour, Waymo's on one hand and Ubers and Lyfts on the other, in cities like Scottsdale, Phoenix, the Bay Area, Los Angeles, Austin, a few other places where Waymo's are now part of the fabric of life, there's really no comparison. And it's just a matter of acceptance. Lorelei points out in the book, we lose 30, 40,000 people on our streets and roads and highways every year. Imagine autonomous vehicles being able to cut that number in half. Would people be willing to sacrifice that kind of American rugged individualism of being able to control your own car all the time? Um, I don't know what kind of trade-offs people are going to make. Look at something like gun violence. Are people willing to make the trade-offs for that? No. So will they make it for autonomous vehicles and safety and fewer deaths? I don't know. I'm skeptical, but maybe.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sue. Thanks for joining us. I think we're in such early days about this as well. You're
Yeah,
right, like one accident and oh, that's national news. It went into a building. The Tesla went into, well, a couple cars went into a couple of other buildings in New Jersey in the last couple of months as well. And
right.
that doesn't get the national news quite the same way. It doesn't
Exactly.
become, look at this, look what possibly could happen to you. And this is what's going to happen. I have to admit, I love to drive, so I would like to not see that go away. So, but you think about for older people, how much easier it would be to say, take me to the store, take me here, take me there,
Yeah.
instead of having to worry about a lot of times older people on the road not being those great drivers. It's let's weigh that back and forth.
Hmm. Right, right.
So Pam Gardow from Altoona, Wisconsin asks, after your research on AI, what did you find most troubling? What are your concerns about its use? And do you have any predictions for the future?
Oof.
See, you've got a
Um,
scientist too now.
yeah, yeah. I'm not a predictor. Um, I have many concerns about its use, but I also am really compelled by its use. And I think there's a lot of confusion, including my own confusion. One of your participants, Carol, just pointed out that Tesla was not in auto drive mode. I
Hmm.
misspoke. I had misread the story. I just kind of breezed through it. This is yeah, Debbie Sharon, and it's interesting. Like it was the Tesla was not on autopilot, where it was immediately before, but someone just overrode it before the accident, just like in culpability.
Hmm.
So, so it's maybe it was, and I don't know anything about the case, but maybe it was human error,
Hmm.
right? Maybe it was the failure to trust the AI that caused the accident.
Hmm.
Right? It's a perfect test case for the kind of problems that you're asking about. I was at a conference in Huntsville, Alabama, and there was a panel on from these biogeneticists who are using AI technologies, machine learning to detect and perhaps treat rare genetic diseases. And these diseases are
Hmm.
maybe 3 or 4 people a year will be diagnosed with them,
Hmm.
and they don't get enough money for treatment because there's so few people who are afflicted with them.
Hmm.
But being able to develop treatments for them, and being able to identify them right on the genetic sequence that causes them, that might open the window for treatment. I don't know. There's protein folding. There's all kinds of ways that these technologies really fill me with wonder, even as they fill me with fright at the
Hmm.
same time. So I think it's very complicated.
And you think about people who you're one of 40 people in the world who have this. you're one of 100 people in the world, and there's not going to be any money put behind it because there are not enough people. I think
Yes.
it's Huntington's disease is one. I remember there was a book done a couple of years ago, and they said the number of people with the Huntington's disease could fit the stadium in Boston. That's how many people, and that's it. It's
Yeah.
53,000 or something, like 35,000. So as a result, there's no big money for big pharma to do anything. But what
Right.
if there was something that could be done by studying all these people together, at which you actually could do with AI? Interesting thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, that the being able to study things at scale,
Hmm.
I think that's one of the big promises, right? Just massive, massive data sets.
Well, I will say too that one thing that I enjoy that I do a lot of interviews, and I've interviewed you, Bruce, one-on-one, and now we can get an AI transcript afterwards. And what it is really great for is me writing the show notes of what happened, because sometimes I don't remember everything that happened, but I'll get the notes later on, and it can help me pull together the synopsis I'm going to put up on top. And
Hmm.
it may pull things that I'm not thinking there were really important, but the way they put it together, it looks really salient. So I'm enjoying that because when I finish an interview, I'll get that list. We can also get, if we have a meeting, they will assign things. So and so said they're going to do this. So and so they said they're going to do that. And it's very interesting to leave a meeting with actual notes upon what everybody says they're going to do. You're going to call here, you're going to call there. Because many times you walk out and you're like, wait a second, what am I supposed to be doing? What's my job? What's my role?
Wait, you said I'm going to write the report? That's a hallucination. I'm not doing that. The
I'm
AI
not
is
doing
lying to me.
that.
That would be my response.
Yeah, no,
But,
AI is going to
I
do it
do
for
think
me.
that like if these things are going to have, especially these large language models, these very basic things, the kind of administrative tasks, those seem to be like ideal functions for
Yes.
these things. It's when you get into the creative realm that then it becomes much more difficult and scarier and creates a lot of anger and righteous anger and anxiety among creative folks across all kinds of domains.
Yeah, what's going to happen? Oh, I do have an answer for you from the chat. Lenexa is near Arlington. Somebody said it was near Arlington.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
somebody whoever said that, if you could pop in again, it was between Arlington and something else. I just saw that pop up
Huh.
after you asked the question.
I grew up in Northern Virginia. I've never heard of it. Huh.
See, this is where we go. Beth Strite from Oak Park, Illinois, is going to join us now.
Great.
Hi, Bruce. I have
Hey.
to say your book was so good and so meaty with issues. I found that fascinating. I've chosen it for my book club that we're having next month. I think there's going to be a lot of issues for us to talk about. And what really struck me were sort of the legal issues as a retired lawyer.
Yeah.
And I was curious, a couple of things. First, the parental responsibility law. You mentioned that Noah was responsible because he wasn't supervising his son. And I wonder if that came from actual law somewhere. And then also the decision that you made in the book that the prosecutors were just going to let the case go and not charge anybody
Hmm.
criminally with it. I was curious about that as well.
Yeah. So the first part that's just something in the Delaware driver's manual about the responsible adult, right? And so you could be culpable if you're officially the responsible adult. Um, and then as far as the prosecutor's decision not to prosecute, I talked to some friends of mine. One is a Commonwealth's attorney, like a prosecutor down here. Another is a defense lawyer. And the feeling was, there's so many examples of people texting while driving and maybe speeding or getting in an accident, but it's so hard to prove exactly when they're texting, when they sent the text, when does it bounce off the tower? Did they send the text the moment before a collision or afterwards? So it was a kind of judgment call. Is there enough evidence to prosecute? Not enough evidence to show that this person is probably liable and maybe could be sued. But would we actually prosecute in this case? So I left that very, very much in the air for a couple hundred pages of the novel.
Right. Yeah, because criminal liability, of course, is harder to prove or harder to get
Yeah.
than civil liability.
Yeah.
Did you come across in talking to prosecutors, did you come across any cases where similar to what you had in your book, where there was an autonomous car, and also people in it who had different levels of responsibility?
Yeah, there weren't there were definitely some uh, civil cases that were very much active and in the news even while I was writing the book. I can't remember. I don't think there were any specific criminal cases about autonomous vehicles, but there were a lot of criminal cases about people texting while driving. And Noah reads them, right? Or
Right.
little paraphrases of them. So I was really I was interested in that and how those kinds of cases and how that kind of that measure of culpability got spread in the context that Noah's working in.
Well,
Because he's a lawyer too. And
right.
I wanted it to be, I have a lot of friends who are lawyers, and I would always have them read little sections. Is this plausible? Because that's all I care about, right? I want someone who's in the profession of one of my characters to read it and tell me if it's at least plausible. And that's all I need.
He was a little sloppy as a lawyer, I thought, but
Oh, yeah.
with talking to people, but I guess that'd be understandable when you're in shock.
Right. Well, that's the whole point. Like his sister comes into the hospital, his sister-in-law comes in and says, "What are you doing, you idiot? Don't talk to anybody." Right. Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed book. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. There's a show right now on Netflix. I think it's called The Wreck. I'm not sure. It might be something different because I never remember titles. And there's this woman who was driving a car, and did she intentionally kill her boyfriend and his friend as they were driving? It's not an autonomous vehicle, but it's a very interesting show. The Crash.
What's it
It's called
called?
The Crash. It's called The
Ooh.
Crash. And it's a documentary. And
Okay. Oh, all right.
and when you watch it, you're watching it from very many POVs, like the parents, the kids, the this, that, the other thing. But what they actually do is they study what happened with the car. Did you put your foot on the accelerator? Did you hold your foot down? Did you release it in time? And it's interesting to see how much you can pull out of the car,
Oh, yeah.
knowledge of what is going on. And it made me think that, like if you had an AI car, like what you could pull through and say, this is what was going on if you could do it the other way.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's, Noah gets really paranoid when he finds out about digital vehicle forensics, right?
Mhm.
This whole new field where
Yes.
people, where the car is a kind of sixth witness, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly
Yeah.
what's happening there is they're just pulling everything apart. And they said, you never took your foot off the brake. I mean, you never took your foot off the gas. And that's a big difference. Okay,
Yeah.
wait, we have another update on where the town is. It's actually near Williamsburg, I think somebody just said,
Okay. Yeah, that makes more
on
sense.
Route
Yeah.
60. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. I read incorrectly before. I'm being corrected. So there we go. Let's see. Shelley Victor is going to be joining us from Delray Beach, Florida.
Hello. Hi, Bruce. Actually,
Okay.
right now I'm in Vermont where
Ah.
it's nice and cool.
Much
So,
nicer than
yes.
in Delray. Yeah.
Yes.
Very, very smart of you. Very smart.
I'm in Delray in the winter and in Vermont in the summer. First of all, thank you for writing the book. Not only did I love the plot and because I didn't know what to expect, but I loved your writing. And that's for me, that's at least half of my enjoyment from the book. So you are just a terrific writer.
Well, thank you.
I was going to ask you about the self-driving car, but there's been so much discussion about it. I am going to sort of switch gears, and I wanted to know if you included Alice's chats with AI to highlight this as a real social problem.
Yes. So to go back to one of my first responses, once I knew that I was dealing with AI, that this book was in part about AI and moral responsibility, um, I just thought, okay, how is this problem affecting all my characters? And Alice is a tween with not many friends. It was just a kind of natural fit to have her be talking to a chatbot, right? And that once I started writing those chats, I got very excited. I think my second draft that I turned in, I only had three or four of them, and my agent read it and said, "We need more bot." And I wrote eight or nine more sections, and that ended up becoming a really important spine of suspense throughout the book, where I wanted to explore what was happening between this young person and a chatbot. And there's been all
Mhm.
kinds of news stories and legal cases about, the harm to young people, self-harm and so on done by these bots. And it became a really important part of the moral compass of the book. Because by the
Is,
end, no spoilers, right? Because you've all have read it,
Mhm.
I guess. But I won't say too much. But
yeah.
by the end, is that storyline is not necessarily resolved, and
Mhm.
I wanted to keep it that way.
Yes, I agree with you. And as a matter of fact, I watched some documentary just about this specific problem, and there was a suicide by the young person, and it is a problem. And people, there were the people on the panel were saying that there should be something embedded into the AI that when a person is writing, I want to commit suicide, that something either shuts down or there's a phone number alerted, something to that
Yeah.
effect to preclude what might end up happening later. So I thought that those were really good suggestions. And I have one other quick question. I read your bio, and so I know that you also do work in the area of the medieval.
Mhm.
And was there any impact on that, on medieval impacting any of your novels?
Yeah, so well, my first two novels were historical thrillers, and they're set in late medieval England. So
Oh.
they're set in the exact period that I study and teach. One is called A Burnable Book, the other is called The Invention of Fire, and they're both kind of historical thrillers that one is about a lost book of prophecies about the deaths of England's kings, and the other is about the birth of the handgunner in Middle English. It's the first portable gunpowder weapons. But I've also, even aside from those historical novels, I've always been very influenced by medieval modes of storytelling. I love stories within stories. I love mixing genres, as in the Canterbury Tales. Um, and I like, telling. I don't know if my novels are complicated, but they definitely are drawing on a kind of thirst for different kinds of storytelling within one book. And I really like then in Culpability, I have the main narrative told by Noah, but then we also have excerpts from Lorelei's book. We have a
Mhm.
New Yorker interview with Daniel Monet. We have those chatbot conversations that you were talking about. So a lot of different genres mixed up. And I think I get that from my love of medieval literature.
Mm.
Well, it certainly helps. So, thank you for writing this novel. I
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much. I really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.
And thank you for joining us, Shelley. We now have Becky Emmendorf from Bend, Oregon, joining us.
Okay. I just want you to know I'm in Bend, Oregon at a retirement community, and one of our many book clubs here enjoyed this immensely. It's the first book that all 10 of us have found that we loved the conversation about it, and we were reading it at the same time as reading about what Pope Leo had to say
Oh
about
my
AI.
goodness. Okay, his
But
encyclical, yes.
yes, but what we want to do is continue the idea that Shelley brought up. We're worried about Alice. I'm a
Okay.
retired high school principal, and so I think my heart goes to young people who are living through their chat boxes and their bot, and that is a concern for us. We felt like everybody was going to survive, but we didn't know about Alice.
Yeah. Well, Alice is doing great. She's 15 now. She has a ton of friends. She's on the lacrosse team. I'm kidding.
Alice has done all right, but Bruce can
No.
make Alice's life really great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think about Alice too, and it's funny, I don't want I love books that have a happy ending, happily ever after. That can be some of my favorites to read. My books are not like that. I often leave threads unresolved. I like
Yes.
to write from the point of view of very complicated young people, and this is definitely that case, right? It's we don't really know how she's going to be at the end because her story is not resolved. Her relationship to Blair is sort of resolved, but what happens with her afterwards is not. And I think
Yes.
that's okay. I want there to be open questions. I want there to be that kind of concern among readers.
So you're not thinking about a sequel.
I'm not thinking about a sequel book, but if it ends up going to a TV series,
Yeah.
it's optioned for a limited series. I don't know if it'll happen or not. I can imagine a later season where we learn more about Alice. Yeah,
Yes.
that's my hope,
I
Well,
could
we
really
had
see it as a
great
series.
conversation about the book. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Becky. I could see it as a limited series because you really have so few locations. And
Yeah,
that's what they really don't want a lot of is locations. So if
right,
you think of the ones that have this ongoing kind of a thing, it's because it's a small town, it's a house here, it's this here, and you're really on the road one time, and that's it. And then if you want
yeah,
to do flashbacks of her in the office or whatever, you can do that
exactly.
pretty simply. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think when people are talking to me right now about their books being optioned, I immediately start to run the budget on locations. I don't
right,
think about the budget of character. I think
right,
about how are you going to create this location and what are you
exactly.
going to do? So, yeah, a film writer told me that a couple of years ago. They came and they said, I said, how about this book? And they go, no, 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 too many sets. And I was like, oh, look at that. That's what it comes down to.
May I
So,
ask one more question
sure,
about the
go for it.
cover?
Go for
I,
it.
Mhm.
I, I wonder how much input you had about the cover
Yeah.
because I chose the book basically because of the cover, but I know authors often don't have anything to say about the
Yeah.
cover.
So basically what happens when you're in trade publishing, maybe 6 months before publication, your editor sends you and your agent an email with
Uh-huh.
a JPEG attached, and it says, "We're so thrilled to tell you, here is the cover that we have come up with for Culpability. Everyone here loves it. Our sales team loves it. Our sales reps love it. Our publicity and marketing teams, everyone in editorial and in the C-suite, we all love it. And we're confident that you will too. And and then basically you either love it or you freak out, right? There's no middle ground. So there's been two times in my novel career where my agent and I decided to push back on a cover. This is not one of them. When I got this on my email, I felt like the designer had read my mind, like was in my brain and thinking what would be the perfect cover for this book. Because yes, it's this bucolic beach scene, right? Where it's a family on the bay and so on, but they're glitched just slightly. And it takes you a second when you look at it, you think, wait a minute, this looks like a regular old, oh, what's happening
Yeah.
with those multicolored glitchy things with this family? I think it's just brilliant. And I loved it from the beginning. So it's not like you get cover approval unless you're, you know, um, David Baldacci, somebody like that. I don't get cover approval. But if your editor is collaborative, if they know what you want, if they have the same vision for your book as you do, then you get something like this. It worked out great for me for this book.
It's really
Thank you.
fabulous. Thanks, Becky. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Bruce, I've got a question for you. Have any of your students read Culpability and talked to you about it?
Yeah, quite a few. And I do a number of like faculty colleagues at UVA have had it on their syllabus. So I've talked a lot about it to students, including my own students.
Yeah.
So it's a little weird because it's again, before this in my career, I've had a couple books do really well, but nothing like this. I've kind of flown under the radar with my fiction writing career at my university, and it's things are changing now, and it's kind of fun.
I liked reading. I remember The Gifted School. I remember really enjoying
Yeah,
that. I remember really, and we talked about that too. I remember we got together and chatted about
that's
that.
right. Yeah.
So now we're going to go to our voice of God, Tom Donadio, our editorial director.
Okay.
Tom, are there any questions from the audience?
Yes, we do have a few. We did cover a lot of ground, so there aren't a ton of questions that that of things that haven't been covered. But we do have a question from Pam. We talked about the cover. Now let's talk a little bit about the title, because Pam wants to know. She thinks that the title is brilliant. Was that always the title? And did you or your publisher come up with it?
It was always my title. And I thought about it a lot. The only other title that I considered was The Lucky Five. If you remember early in the book, when the family, after the accident, Noah's at the hospital, he goes down to the coffee shop or the restaurant or whatever, and he sees a newspaper, and there's a headline that says Lucky Five Escape Crash. And his family is being identified as the lucky five. And so he has this kind of cynical reaction to it. Like, oh yeah, we're really lucky. We've got these concussions, we have a broken leg, we have this poor couple that died in this other car, right? I'm freaked out. We're not lucky at all. So I think the title was a little too bitter. But my agent wasn't thrilled with it, but we couldn't find anything else before we sent it out. And my editor wasn't thrilled with it. She thought we might want to come up with something more descriptive. And it just, nobody could come up with anything better. So it just stuck. And I'm really glad it did, because I do think it kind of typifies exactly what's going on in the book.
Mm-hmm. A little off center.
Yeah.
Now, you alluded to the ending a little earlier, and we do talk spoilers. We do welcome that here. So we have a question from Laura who said the biggest surprise for me is the final revelation about the daughter Alice. I felt that twist recontextualizes the blame for the tragedy instead of the accident being a clear-cut case of human error or a failure of the autonomous driving system. Was that your intent?
Yeah. I mean, it was, again, everybody is responsible in some way. So Alice's scream at the last second, what is that? What is in that scream? That's one of the questions that, like, if I were writing an academic essay on this book, I was like, what is in that scream, right? It's anger at her brother. It's frustration with the situation. It is this kind of little bit of rebelliousness. It's this relationship with her chatbot where she's allowing herself to get ginned up and writing to her artificial friend. Um, and it's just kind of despair at the whole situation. And it's an incredible act of responsibility, of irresponsibility,
Mhm.
right? But it's also, if the car is driving itself, it shouldn't have any effect, right? Someone can scream in a car that's in self-driving mode, and there should, you can scream in the back of a Waymo all you want, nothing's going to happen. So that is to me, that's one of the central questions of the book. I was a little bummed. I learned in my book tour early on, I kept getting this question where people would say, the whole plot with Alice was not resolved. What happened with her? What happened with her and Blair? And I realized a lot of people were reading it on Kindle, and the Kindle version of it had this huge glitch where a lot of the bot conversations got squished down into this unreadable form. So you had to go on your browser on your Kindle in order to read them. So a lot of people had trouble with those. I had a lot of confusing questions about that initially. So,
And it's
yeah.
technology. There was
Yeah,
technology
exactly.
creating the problem.
Technology. Right, right.
We have this very interesting thought from Ella who says, when I presented your book at our book club, I
Uh-oh.
ended with this comment. Digital life in the future is set to replace biological life. Some scientists are comparing it to a pandemic or nuclear war to wipe out humanity. It's a time for all humans of all races, religions, and cultures to come together to save human life. Can AI be the catalyst that will finally unite the human race? And so Ella wants to know how you feel about this thought.
Oof, wow. Yeah. Let me put on my
Uniting the human race, I mean, that is
Nostradamus
a
hat.
huge thing for AI
Yeah.
to do.
It's such a great question. I think about human machine interactions a lot. And I don't think it's a question of replacement. I think it's a question of cohabitation
Mhm.
and collaboration in an optimistic scenario, right? There's a, and I think, this is going to be a kind of dodgy answer, but I think fiction can help us think about these relationships in really powerful ways. There's a wonderful book coming out that I just read for an endorsement a couple of weeks ago, called Fabrications. And it's by an author named Zachary Mason. And it's just a set of short stories that are written in the voices of AIs that are interacting with humans in various ways. And some of them are helping them. Some of them are kind of escape the guardrails and doing these absolutely bizarre, unpredictable things. But one of the things that I absolutely loved about the book, I'm gonna type the name of it into the chat, um, um, is that it, it's not about despair, um, and it's not about apocalypse. It's about all these different freaky possibilities. And some of them they're just every day, right? Like AI is a home healthcare worker who's helping an old woman stay on her meds, right? A very lonely person. Others are like one is just incredible where this AI has convinced itself. It's a kind of agentic AI working for the head of a drug cartel. And it's convinced itself that it's the Mayan god of death or goddess of death. And it's just astonishing. So I really think that, we have no idea how we're going to be interacting with these things in 10, 20 years. Um, But it's not going to be just up to us. It's going to be up to them too. Contrary almost to what Lorelei says in the book. Um, it'll be fascinating.
Jean asks, will you write another book with AI? And have you read about the combination of agentic AI and quantum computing? That seems like an unlimited application for breakthrough in medicine and other areas. Do you think AI is a foundational breakthrough as the transition between the dark Middle Ages and the new Middle Ages in history?
Yeah,
Whoa.
I'm not a big believer in the Dark Ages as a name for the Middle Ages. I think the Middle Ages are full of light and give us so many beautiful relics of civilization and literature and so on. But I do think a lot about this question of those kinds of technological breakthroughs. I'm not a tech person. I have no idea how quantum computing even works. What I do know is that the people I talk to in the AI world are very worried about it and are worried about that combination. You put that in the hands of an agentic AI and, the lights are off, literally. So, yeah, who knows? I'm not qualified in the least
Hmm.
to answer that kind of question. But again, I can point you to fiction as a kind of thought experiment.
All right, and those are all the questions in the Q&A.
Great.
Wow, that was really
Thank
terrific.
you, Bruce.
Terrific.
Of
So,
course.
Bruce, I have the one last question that I bet you're going to guess. What are you working on now, and are you working on something?
Yeah, I am. And in fact, and I can answer another little bit of that last question. My new novel that I'm working on now touches lightly on AI, but more just as context, not as any kind of theme. But it's a book called The Beta Test is the working title. And it's another kind of contemporary suspenseful family drama
Hmm.
about our so-called masculinity crisis. And it's about boys and men, what's happening to our boys, but all wrapped into this what I hope is a pretty propulsive family drama.
And do we have a timeline for this coming out? Is it
Well, I have a timeline for my deadline. Who knows?
okay?
I mean, I think the very earliest it would come out is probably summer of 2027, I imagine. Maybe earlier. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. If Oprah calls,
Yeah,
you never know. Wally Lamb says she called more than once. He goes, "Don't you have somebody else you want to call? Like you've already called me
exactly.
before,
Yeah.
Don't say that if she calls. It's really okay. It's really okay. Thank you for joining us, Bruce. It really means a lot to us that you came back to join us, and you had a great audience tonight with a lot of really good questions. So we appreciate the audience as well.
Thank you. And Carol, thank you so much as always. And I just want to say to the audience, it means so much when you show up to these things, when you buy books from independent bookstores, that's the name of the game. And I really appreciate your attention. So thank you again.
Thanks again, and we'll have you back. We'll definitely have
Great.
you back again
I'd love
soon.
that.
Thanks
All
so
right. Take
much.
care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye bye now. For everybody else, thank you for joining us this evening. We appreciate your taking the time to be with us. There are a couple more announcements from us tonight. Tonight's event will be available on YouTube and on our podcast probably later this week, maybe beginning of next week. And we'll alert you when that happens. We've created an events page on tbrnetwork.com/events where you can sign up for all of our programs. We're not going to do any book evening events in July and August. We know a lot of people are traveling. Just for historical value here, July is the only month of the year that there is no school in session across the country. There goes that. So we decide people will be on vacation in July, and we take some time the end of August. So there you go. We will be back in September. We don't know who the author is going to be. We're trying to line up people for September, October, November. And then in December, we usually have our reviewers come on and talk about their favorite books of the year. We will have a Bookaccino Live book preview event, afternoon event on Wednesday, July 8th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and sign up for that is available. And if you sign up for our events at the Book Report Network newsletter, you'll never miss an event. And that is on TBR Network /newsletters. You have all our newsletters there. And if you haven't signed up before, we have a lot of great programs, and we have a lot of Tom manages a fabulous number of reviews that come out every week editorially, and all kinds of features and contests. We also have more than 250 Book Reporter Talks To interviews. I did another interview with Bruce when this book first came out. They're available on our YouTube channel, the Book Report Network, and wherever you listen to podcasts, including we're also on Spotify. So that is another thing that you'll be able to reach us on these days, which we are really excited about. And with that, thank you very much for joining us this evening. If you're joining us just for book club events, we'll see you in September. And if not, we hope to see the others of you in July. On behalf of Tom, myself, and the rest of the Book Reporter team, we really appreciate you joining us tonight. It was a really nice crowd for us to bring to Bruce and for this book and this event. Thank you so much now.